Welcome to the Great Beer State podcast from the Michigan Brewers Guild. The Great Beer State is a weekly show sharing conversations and stories from the passionate people who contribute to our vibrant Michigan beer community. It is made up of a mix between full-length, archived interviews from the Guild's first documentary book project, A Rising Tide, Stories from the Michigan Brewers Guild, and conversations recorded in the here and now. Each episode is kicked off with a conversational update from host Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Guild, and the beervangelist Fred Biltman, author of A Rising Tide. Here's Scott and Fred. All right, welcome to lucky number episode 13 of Michigan's Great Beer State podcast. I've got a little different background this week as I'm on the road and coming to you from Big Buck Brewery in Gaylord, Michigan. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Fred.
So I'm up in your neck of the woods. We are at surprisingly close distance, well more than 6 feet, but not much more. For a special edition. So as usual, we've got an interview coming up. This week's episode is from the Rising Tide archives, so that'll be fun. We're talking to Aubrey Martinson of Chelsea Alehouse in Chelsea, Michigan. But we'd like to start with updates for brewery, allied, and enthusiast members, and of course our Michigan beer-loving public. Scott, what's new?
The big news for us, which I guess isn't really that big a news, is that we just recently announced the cancellation of the Detroit Fall Beer Festival. So our last planned event for 2020 is now down the tubes. It can't be a surprise to anybody. I think, to imagine a large gathering even later in October right now doesn't really seem very likely. So it just got to the point where we're no longer in sit and wait mode, but go ahead and plan on not having the Detroit Fall Beer Festival mode. So more sad news, but looking forward to a more normal 2021, I'm hoping.
Let's hope. That's significant and difficult to hear, understandable. I hope all of our supporters and the attendees and those that were planning to attend are understanding as well. But boy, what a difficult situation, and I guess we just plan to move forward as best as possible. And so really that puts the next Guild in-person activity on the horizon to make that decision, being the Winter Conference, a collaboration with Master Brewers District Michigan and Great Lakes Hop and Barley Conference, and that happens in January of 2021.
Yeah, let's hope that's an in-person event. I think I'm still thinking about unknowns into the new year, for sure.
Yeah, that's all we can do at this point. Any thoughts on the best way for people to stay in tune, in touch, appraised of all these decisions as they come up and as we look forward to 2021?
You can always check our website, of course, at mibeer.com, mibeer.com. And we put things out on social media, and I think that travels pretty quickly as well. But you can always check the website for updates.
All right, great. Anything else by way of updates, or should we move on to the Brewers Dozen?
Well, if somebody's listening to this at some point well into the future, we just had presidential candidate Biden announce Senator Harris as a running mate. So it might not seem like really big news to everybody today, but who knows, somebody might be listening in 12 years and find that an interesting nugget.
Yes, it is a fascinating and tumultuous year for sure in all things, and that's an exciting thing. So let's jump into our Brewers Dozen, our weekly Johnson to giving shout outs to members of the Michigan Brewers Guild. Scott, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Let's start with a longtime member and industry leader, Bell's Brewery. Of course, there's the brewery in Galesburg and Bell's Brewery with the Eccentric Cafe and General Store in Kalamazoo.
Yeah, my alma mater. Started working there when it was Kalamazoo Brewing Company in 1995, the Wayback Machine. Next up, we've got Beers Inwood Brewery in Charlevoix.
Yeah, it's a interesting little spot just south of Charlevoix, and it's kind of in an art gallery. I think it was a pottery studio at one point, so it's kind of artsy and small. Quaint little stop off of 31 when you're headed north. Brickside Brewery in Copper Harbor. We're getting to the far corners of the state this week. So Brickside's all the way, about as far north and removed as you can get in Michigan, although it probably seems like the center of the universe to them.
I was going to say that must be our northernmost brewery, because I got to believe it's the just about northernmost point in Michigan.
Yeah.
Next up, from Marshall, Michigan, longtime member Dark Horse Brewing Company.
Yeah, lots of fond memories of times with the Dark Horse folks. Lansing Brewing Company in Lansing. They're getting to be quite a long time member now, but I remember when they opened, it was good to see a brewery right down in the heart of Lansing. So it's a great place to go have a beer, and they're distributing their beers as well.
Nice. And last week we spoke with Peter of Beards in Petoskey. This week we've got Mackinac Trail Winery and Brewery in Petoskey, Michigan.
Yeah, they have a winery and vineyard, but they've got a nice little brewery right there, and their tasting room is pretty wine focused, but you can have a good beer too. Fresh Coast Beer Works in Traverse City might be recognized as Monkey Fist Brewing Company, but they retooled their name sometime in the last 12 months. They shifted to Fresh Coast Beer Works, but that's part of the Traverse City community.
All right, and then moving back to Grand Rapids, Michigan, we've got Gray Line Brewing Company, one of many breweries in the bustling beer city of Grand Rapids.
And One Well Brewing back in Kalamazoo, running a great operation, been around for a few years. Great characters at One Well, and good beer too.
Yes, this next one just has me wanting a beer. I don't know why, but Pavlov's Brewing Company in Temperance, Michigan.
Yeah, that's in another corner of the state, really. That is practically Ohio, and I don't know the whole history, but I do know it has something to do with the Prohibition era, the name of Temperance. There's also a pretty large distillery there, which is kind of ironic. Saugatuck Brewing Company, our friends there, they have their primary location in Douglas, and they also have another brewery in Kalamazoo.
And back to your neck of the woods, we've got Snowbelt Brewing Company in Gaylord.
Yeah, we're kind of hosting the show from Big Buck and Gaylord. Thought it'd be nice to give Snowbelt a shout out also, another fun place here in Gaylord. And then we'll wrap up with one of the very first licensed brew pubs. I think they were number 2 or 3, maybe 3, but Wiltsey's Brew Pub in Oscoda.
Right on. So that is the Brewer's Dozen for episode 13 of Michigan's Great Beer State podcast. Thank you, breweries, for doing what you do and bringing people beautiful beer and bringing communities great places to share those beers over conversation. And that reminds me, that really leads us into our guest, Aubrey. I love this interview. She does a lot. She shares their view on community and how that inspired them as an entrepreneur, and kind of how breweries contribute that or to that sort of ethos. And I enjoyed her sort of bright, fresh perspective, let's say, and I was glad that we had younger breweries with sort of a different timeline than all the breweries that were around when the guild started. So I thought that was a refreshing addition to the book, and look forward to sharing this interview. What were your thoughts?
I really enjoyed listening to Aubrey's interview. You know, I've gotten to know her, and she mentioned a little bit of that. But she's one of these folks that came into the community and wanted to help, and you know, after mentioning that a couple times, we got her involved with some of our annual winter conference planning and execution, and she dug in and has been a great help. I will say she helps make the conference better. But it was just really fun listening to her kind of perspective on getting involved with the community and what she takes away from the conference and what it means to her. I found it really giving me some energy just thinking about that and looking forward to it. So yeah, I agree. Her perspective is kind of bright and fresh, and that's part of her character as well. So it was another great interview.
And she was not on the board of directors at the time of the interview, which was in the fall of 2018, but she has since joined the board of directors. And so her conversation doesn't reflect that, although you hear her talking about stepping up and getting involved. And if you see a future that can be different, maybe you can be part of making that happen. So what was it like for her to step forward and make herself available to be on the board of directors and then join?
To me, it's a really logical and sensible evolution, and there are certainly other people who have done similar things where they are interested in what's going on and they're supportive, and then they offer to be a little bit bigger part, and I think they get to see a little bit more of some of the gears turning and the work that's going on at the guild, and it's just really been rewarding for me to see those people then say, well, I'd like to be more involved, and then get elected to the board. So it's a great example of what I think is a good way for our board to evolve and get some fresh talent, and for people to get more involved. And then as they cycle out, hopefully we get more and more of that, because it really helps influence brewery members' perspective to get a little closer look at what the guild does and tries to do and the work it does. I think it really helps the perspective and appreciation in general, not trying to pat our own collective backs, but it's really helpful for members to have that appreciation. I think it goes a long way to rewarding those of us who work behind the scenes.
And I think it's really encouraging. Didn't really intend this rhythm the way it laid out, but talking to Peter at Beards and Aubrey from a couple of years ago, both of their breweries opened around the same time when there's already a couple hundred breweries in the state. Both of them ended up, after their openings rolled for a number of years, being able to step up and get involved in the guild. And I just think it's interesting. It's encouraging that when we set out to do a Rising Tide, we wanted to really help paddle forward that idea of camaraderie and stretch our sort of principles to the next generation of breweries. And hearing from these two breweries that came into existence when the guild was already there and strong and holding festivals and holding conferences, and hearing them sort of move it forward in another way, and not just from one brewery member, but hearing this consistent belief and support of the camaraderie that we have in the state and our community. It's just encouraging. I think maybe that's partly what you were saying about her take on the conference, and it's great to hear from different parts of the state in breweries that came into the fold. I think it's sort of proof that you're never too late and we're never too big to have new enthusiastic members become integral parts of the team.
Yeah, I think that's really a great observation. Yes, agreed.
So with that, we'll raise our glass and hand it over to Aubrey, sitting in the beer garden at Bell's in the fall of 2018, in the interview that took place for Rising Tide. Here's Aubrey. Cheers.
Cheers to Aubrey and the Chelsea Alehouse Brewery.
Hi, Aubrey.
Fred.
Nice to sit with you here today.
Yeah, it's really good to be here.
We've been trading old stories and kind of talking about the guild and how people came to beer. And I'd love to start with just how did you find yourself in the beer business? What's your origin story in terms of how did you come across beer?
I came into contact with the Brewers Guild because my husband opened a brewery in late 2012. And we were able to join the Brewers Guild in 2013. Mm-hmm. And from there, I became more involved because I attended the conferences and really enjoyed myself there and wanted to help make the Brewers conferences be even better. Yeah. And so I've been helping a little bit with some of the presenter wrangling and that type of thing. But my experience with the Guild goes back to, of course, the first festival I ever attended. Which was the Summer Beer Festival in Ypsi.
Okay. And what year was that?
I was trying to think about that, and I have no idea when it was.
Well before being involved in opening a brewery.
Well before, yeah. As sort of a person whose drinking career is as old as the Guild.
Perfect.
I was able to kind of enjoy these things as I was growing into beer.
Yeah.
The Guild has always been there, but I don't know at what point we intersected, and I don't know when the first festival would have been, but I know I probably went to one in like 2002 or
yeah, that's
one.
Great. And so tell me about that first festival. Like, what did you take away from it? Were you like familiar with that world of beer that existed, or were there surprises? Like, what did you walk away? What was the next morning conversation like?
The thing, it wasn't even about the beer for me, because I had been enjoying craft beer, buying it from this little store in Albion, mostly, getting Bell's, whatever. But my experience at the first festival that I went to, the thing I took away most was how happy everybody is. It was like one of the most joyful places. It was just so great to be there. Everybody was so happy and peaceful. I mean, to get that many people crammed into a hot, wet park and to still be having a good time, that's what I took away. Everybody was just so happy and friendly. And it didn't really matter if you knew the person standing in line next to you. You were going to, cheers, maybe share beer and have a good conversation.
Yeah. Do you feel like it ended up having any impact on how you looked at beer after that festival and in the community of beer? Like,
totally.
Did it influence your next visit to the store or your next visit to a brewery?
Yeah, I think that sort of the way we came together as friends in college in some ways was around drinking interesting beers and sharing interesting beers and finding weird stuff and having that as a shared experience. And then going to one of the Guild festivals, it kind of elevated it. Like, okay, so we know we're not the only ones who are enjoying beer this way, and there are so many more people who are enjoying beer, and sharing that experience with everybody, and then taking that to the next level, like years later as a business owner, to say, hey, we want to share this love for community and bringing people together, and we want to do that by opening a brewery and bringing people together in that way. So it just sort of, that's kind of the constant thing throughout my experience with the Guild is how can we find a way to bring people together through beer, through enjoyment, and create connections and make stuff happen.
Yeah, and you're saying that's consistent with the ethos you have at your brewery.
Yeah.
It's pretty much same mission with a different scope.
Exactly. It's the same mission. We want people to come in and enjoy themselves and have a nice, safe space to just really be themselves and enjoy their friends. And if they happen to share a beer, that's great.
So do you find your path to becoming a brewery owner, did you find it like, well, of course I did, like it was inevitable, or were you surprised by it? It's like, wow, surprising to be here in the brewery business? Like, tell me, I guess I'm interested in how that felt coming into that, and especially in the planning years, and then I don't know what it looked like to get that open.
Right. Well, it wasn't always our dream to open a brewery necessarily. Our dream was more to have a lifestyle that was kind of blended, our dream was to have a lifestyle that blended work and life, that we knew we weren't good at separating our work life from our personal life. And so what could we do that kind of blends those things? Mm-hmm. And I think for my husband, he really likes making stuff. He likes making things. He likes making things for other people. And so that was kind of the avenue that we took. You know, we wanted to run a business of some sort, and beer was the thing that we felt was the best way to make that happen. Mm-hmm. So kind of taking, I guess we could have probably stamped our ethos on any number of things. We could have sold flower bulbs, or we could have, had some other type of business, but it was, beer was the thing that we came to.
Awesome. And when you looked around, so 2012, by, I don't know the number, but by that time we had a number of breweries in the state, and the, the spotlight is on craft brewing to a certain degree. How can you describe sort of the landscape and what that looked like to you in terms of your own sort of rooting interest or business planning in terms of, did it feel like a lot? Did it feel like a little? Was it proof of concept, or,
Yeah, it's so interesting. I feel like we opened the Chelsea Alehouse at a time when everything was shifting. So the folks that we were drawing from when my husband was writing his business plan, they all changed their business models to a degree soon after we opened. And so, we wanted to be one of those places where, we had some snacks, but not really a kitchen. We had a kind of a kitchen, right? So, we wanted to be a brewery with food, not a restaurant with beer.
Yeah.
And we are now a restaurant with beer. We've become a brew pub with, 30 some taps, and a full kitchen. But when we opened, it was, pretty open space, kind of flexible. It was order at the bar. It was, have some snacks with your beer. But more and more, like, people were demanding, sit down, I want a server. I've got, why don't you have French fries? We still don't have French fries, but, like that kind of thing. So the people we were drawing from for inspiration and advice and education, they changed their business models soon after to kind of go with where we have eventually gone. And actually, the Brewers Guild Winter Conference was really instrumental in kind of solidifying the need to change what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We don't need to make the best beer in the state, and we don't need to make all of the beer that we serve, because there are so many people making really great beer in this state. And one of the things we learned was from Bart Watson, that, kind of the things that we were feeling and we were kind of intuiting about our business were actually national trends, and that we weren't alone in feeling neglected by our distributor and feeling that customers' needs and desires are constantly changing. And so we realized that, we wanted to serve our customers first. And so we went from being a microbrewery to becoming a brew pub.
Yeah, I was just going to clarify that.
Food.
So you actually went through a license change.
We did.
That's not just that's not a small corner of like, hey, we should add some servers. I mean, that's sort of a renovation of business structure.
A huge shift.
Yeah.
And it came with a relocation, so we relocated as well. So it was sort of like, well, we're moving, so let's just look at everything and change what we're doing to reflect what our customers want, also the business that we feel that the community needs. And it was really the Brewers Guild, just attending the conference helped us understand that we weren't alone in how we were feeling and the things we were seeing and the trends within our own business.
Yeah.
But during that time, when we signed with our distributor, which at the time it's a lifetime contract, at the time they said, we'll take everything you can give us. And we said, great, we're signing, because that was the experience of some of the folks that we were talking to. They said, they just show up and they take everything I have. That person didn't even need a salesperson. Mm-hmm. So then we kind of came right in. I think we were, there were under 200 breweries when we opened. But then, so many opened in 13, 14, 15 that it just became hard for the distributors to keep up. And it was hard for us to compete, and so... Yeah, so
and it also seemed like you were focusing your lens in terms of who you were trying to serve, and that you had customers and they wanted certain things. And I'm paraphrasing to see if I understand it, but like the distribution game is customers often that you don't have yet.
Right.
If you're a young brewery just getting started, a lot of that is a future proposition of you're trying to gain new distribution, you're trying to get new customers. Where I feel like I hear you reflecting on the fact we have customers in front of us that we aren't delivering everything they want to.
Right, yeah.
And so you shaped around a smaller, more focused community.
Yes, exactly. And really that was our main goal, is to serve the community that we're in. And, we didn't have a strong drive to send our beer to every corner of the state. That's just not really what we wanted to do. And just hearing from other people how tight the distribution market is.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room, and you really have to jockey for shelf space and tap space. And it just didn't make sense to continue with that, because we had these beautiful, loyal customers coming in and saying, hey, we love what you do, but we want X, Y, and Z too. Can you do that? Or my friend would come if you had such and such.
Yeah.
So, we don't need to make everything. We make some of the things. But it's great, because now we can invite other brewers to have their product in our business.
Yeah.
And typically they're people we know and we've met through festivals and conferences, and they're good people and we know them. And that makes us feel really good to serve the beer from folks we've had conversations with.
So I've been a fan. I've been going to Brewers conferences for a really long time. Like, I was inspired by my first craft brewers conference, which must have been 96 or something. And then that has always fed my influence and my contributions to helping form what became the Michigan Brewers Guild Conference. So I'm a believer in sort of educating yourself and engaging and taking things away and figuring out how to find the takeaways.
Yeah.
I say that as kind of a premise of like, that's also what you did. That's a major business life-changing takeaway from a conference, which requires a certain posture and a certain, willingness to believe what you're hearing and apply it to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so we were just talking in the previous interview about kind of how to encourage young brewers or brewery people to even to talk about what's the invitation to go to a conference and how do you extract the most out of it. So with that story, I just feel like, I wonder if you could speak to a little bit about where did you gain that sort of belief in the power of a conference, of going at that young of a business and then being open to having a conversation and changing your perspective so dramatically? Well, is there sort of a belief that you had going in, and how would you encourage others to go to a conference and be open to that sort of big idea?
Well, I think the winter conference is literally my favorite time of the year. It's like Christmas. So the winter conference is really spectacular because everybody just comes together, and I think most people are just coming with an open mind and interested in educating themselves, and that's really the best way to attend. Just come and just be present and be there and be open to what people are saying. I think there are lessons that can apply to breweries of all sizes. And if you leave the conference thinking that wasn't for me, then you probably weren't listening. And because every presenter will have something you can take home and take action on, or share with your staff, or share with your colleagues.
Even if it's conviction in your beliefs that are opposite of the presenter.
Yeah. Exactly.
Disagreeing with the presenter.
Yeah.
But allowing that disagreement to clarify your position can be really valuable.
Yes. There was.
Be like, here's why I disagree. Whatever comes out next might be your most brilliant hour because you're finally you're sharpening a point.
Yep. And there was one last year where my husband was like, I don't need to be in this one. I'm going to go now. And it was fine because it was not relevant to him.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the best way to enjoy the conference is just to come with an open mind and to just be ready to absorb everything you possibly can. And that means, yes, there's the hospitality room, but do we need to spend all of our time there? No. And, taking advantage of
Aubrey's 10 tips.
The 10 tips. You can spend some time in the hospitality room, but not all your time. And also keeping in mind that the speakers themselves, they're like strangers in a strange land, and they may have friends to hook up with. But I had the best time hanging out with Rich Michaels last year, and we hung out all night, and I learned so much from him and the folks that we were hanging out with. So, the other thing is so there's the conference, but then there's what happens afterwards. And you could go to sleep in your hotel room, you could go to the pool, you could hang out in the hospitality room, or you could just find somebody who really interests you, hone in on them, and say, hey, let's go have a beer. Yeah. And I think that's, that kind of those side conversations are really special too, because being a 3-day conference where you're there for 2 nights really affords those kind of late night conversations.
Well, and the access is entirely different than going to, my favorite stories of the Craft Brewers Conference is when there were 1,600 people. Now they're 14,000. And so
wow.
What the Guild Conference, I'll leave room for you to speak to this rather than answering it myself, but I feel like the Guild offers an access to those experts and speakers and an opportunity for conversation and relationship building that you won't get in a bigger venue. There's a comfort level.
And I would agree with that. I think this conference in particular is small enough that you do have access to the presenters and to other people who are just attending as brewery owners or brewers, who might be somebody that a small brewer admires. And those folks are there and generally available for conversation. If you want to talk to them, just go up and introduce yourself. And it is, I think the access is really important. It's a really nice time because I feel like it's kind of at capacity in some ways, and it could grow or it could stay the same size and be just as special.
And what do you feel? I'm good, thanks. Do you want any bug spray?
I'm good for now. I might spray my ankles.
Okay. As a brew pub, we talked about the conference. What beyond the conference? Where do you think how has your view of the guild and what do you value about being a part of the guild? How's your view changed becoming a business owner? And as you've grown up as a pub, what do you think is the invitation for others to be in the guild, or what do you take away as the most valuable part of being a member?
Well, I think it's in some ways it's the access. It's knowing that we're part of a community and that we can reach out to people who are also in that community and ask them questions. I mean, when we were making the decision to become a brew pub, we called Tony Grant at Nubco. We called Scott Newman Bale at Shorts. I talked to Scott Graham about it. Like we had a lot of conversations, and it was great to say, hey, this is what we're thinking and this is how we're feeling. I'm gonna run this by you. Do you think we're crazy? You know, and it's great. And Russell at Right Brain has also been really great with advice, and Brad at Original Gravity has been one of our advisors from the beginning. And, you know, we can always call these guys and say, hey, we need to talk. And they'll just drop whatever they're doing and have a conversation. And that's really special. And, you know, maybe they're the kind of people who would just do that anyway, you know, but I wouldn't feel as comfortable. Sorry, I touched the microphone. I wouldn't feel as comfortable just calling somebody up out of the blue as I do, you know, knowing that I've met them before, I've been in the same room with them, we've seen each other at breakfast at the conference, or we've been in the VIP tent at the Brewers Guild festivals before.
You're part of a club.
Right, so we know these guys, and we are familiar with them, and we know that they'll be able to put a face with a name when we give them a call.
It's great. What do you think is, I think that the Michigan brewing and beer scene is recognized by many as a significant, you know, it has a significant reputation across the country as being really good and fertile. What do you think are the hallmarks that make the Michigan brewing scene special?
You know, that's a hard one to answer for me because I don't necessarily have the comparison to other scenes. Because we have this pub and we're hyper local with our focus, we haven't done a lot of traveling outside of the state for the purposes of selling beer or whatever. So I don't really have a lot to compare it to.
What do you love about it?
But what I love about it, and what is kind of personally relevant, is the camaraderie. It really is a club, and it really is a guild, and we may not always all agree, but we're in it together, and we really all want to make the beer scene in Michigan the best in the country. And we want people to travel to Michigan to drink our beer and participate in our creation. And we want people to see that. And we want people to be drawn to it. And I think if we're enjoying it and if we're having a great time with it, then other people will want to do that too. So I would have to say it's kind of that camaraderie and the connection around what we do.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have thoughts about what do you think is important to keeping what we have, keeping the camaraderie, keeping the strength, and what's important to fueling our path towards, you know, whatever great is as we continue to strive for it? What do you, what's crucial?
I would say keeping the conversations going, you know, finding ways, and I think the Guild is doing this with some of the smaller meetups they've been doing around the state. I think being the catalyst for conversation and having brewers, brewery owners, brewery staff members have a way to connect and have conversations about what's challenging right now. What are we all facing? Where, you know, some ways that maybe I'm unique, nobody else is having the same problem I'm having, or, feeling that maybe we're all in the same boat and we're all experiencing this growing pain or whatever. So yeah, I think just providing ways to keep the conversation going is really important.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I guess a couple more questions. What do you think? What do you wish more members knew? Or not members. What do you wish more breweries knew about the organization, about the guild?
I wish more members would know how receptive the leadership is to input. I think that, sometimes because people don't really know who I am in relation to like the conference, for example.
Right.
They don't know that I'm helping to plan it, that I'm, helping to execute some of the plans, I guess I would say that. So I'll be sitting at a table and folks will complain about one part of the conference or another, and it's all very constructive. But I don't think that would get filtered up because they're just complaining to their friends around the table.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that one of the things I just want people to know is how receptive everybody has been to input that I've interacted with. I said to Scott Graham, hey, I want to volunteer. And, he's so busy, and I know he's so busy, and I love the guild, and I just wanted to help take something off his plate.
Yeah.
And it took me a while of saying, hey, remember I said I'd help? And one day, and I remember, I think it was Fall Festival, and he was walking, and he's like, hey, I know what I want you to help with. I want you to help contact speakers. And I was like, great, I will totally help with that. So, it wasn't like, it's like a boys club and nobody wants, me around. It's like, yes, please come help. We could all use some assistance. And I really love the little niche I found, and I think I can kind of swoop in, do a little bit of help, and then leave, and then we just do it again next year. And that just goes back to people being receptive, and I think that is.
And so the next part of them understanding that it's more receptive is also, like, I'm just hearing the second half of that is really encouraging them to speak up, that get engaged and say something.
Right, and if there's something you
offer your opinion.
Right,
it's the second part of that.
If there's something that you see that you wish would happen, it might be that it's not happening because there's just not enough people involved. And if you see something, if you can look to a future where you could see something happening differently, then perhaps you're the person that could help make that happen differently.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm saying there.
Yeah,
It's is get involved, be a leader, and don't expect that this is the type of thing where it's like a top-down kind of structure. It's really bottom up. The guild exists for its members. And that's the bottom line, is the guild exists to support its membership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. So I guess wrapping up, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, you've already hit on community and that being an inspiration and kind of a motivation for how you shape your path. Can you talk a little bit about what having a healthy brewery can do for a community? Maybe what you're proud of in terms of seeing how you've contributed to your own community, and then how that may relate to the bigger picture of having a healthy brewing community and what that can do for a larger community?
Yeah. Right. So community is really important to us, and the way we can help create a healthy community is by providing a space where everybody is welcome. Everybody is welcome and everybody feels good about being there. We tend to have an atmosphere where it's totally normal for a woman to come in and drink a beer at the bar alone by herself and read a book. And I love that. We have a safe space where people feel comfortable coming. And I think providing providing a space where folks can get together it's not their living room, but it's like the next best thing.
Yeah.
And people feel like...
And people clean up.
Yeah, somebody cleans
Somebody
up
else
after
will
you.
take your glasses away.
Right. So people do treat our business like their second home or their kind of third place where, you know, they have friends coming into town. Well, they'll just meet up at the brewery. They'll come out for live music. They will have a surprise birthday party. They'll have a baby shower. You know, we become that space that helps people celebrate and come together. And to us, that's really kind of a beautiful thing, is to be that place, the first place that they think of when they want to celebrate something.
Yeah.
And also the first place they think of when they just want to gather a random group of friends to have a conversation or have a club, or we've got a book club, we've got knitting groups that come, you know, and it's that kind of space where, you know, we just exist, and we've got refreshments, we've got food, we've got beer, and people can come and hang out. And they do, and that's, to us, that's pretty great.
Yeah. And does that translate or shift at all when you think about as communities get, you know, more than one brewery, and as states get 340 breweries? I guess what are signs of it being a healthy community? And I'm kind of wandering around, kind of wrapping into a final question, but what do you think it means to the state of Michigan to have a healthy brewing community? Is the short question, and you can relate it to your other experiences however you'd like.
Yeah. Well, I think to have a healthy brewing community, the state of Michigan benefits greatly because they have this hugely creative industry of people who are making things that people want to come to your town to enjoy, or they want to go to the store and get it. So there's like the economic benefits that of course are inherent in running a business. But then there's all the social benefits of, you know, so, you know, we've got this great little place where people can hang out in Chelsea, and there are places like that all over the state of Michigan where people can come together and have an experience that it's usually a little bit more casual than a restaurant. You know, there's like, yes, it's a restaurant, but it's a little bit more casual. I think that...
Yeah, but I hear you. I feel like jumping in and sharing what you're making me think of, which is it also seems, when you talk about the welcoming space and the safe space, that, you know, this starts to change what on-premise alcohol establishments offer to the community, at least post-prohibition. And that I feel like we've expanded how many people like this.
Yeah. Meaning
that, you know, bars, like sports bars and restaurants, served a certain part of our world, and weren't for everybody. And we may not be for everybody either. But we are demonstrating that come together over a beverage is enjoyable for a wider range of socio-demographics, right? Because I think we're just approachable to more ways of life.
And I think that's a great point, and I think that breweries have been kind of that way you can connect with beer that isn't just go sit in a dark bar and drink your beer.
Knitting clubs didn't have a place to go in the 80s.
Right.
Now they do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so I mean the knitting clubs, and it's, you know, the ladies, you know, who have gray hair who are coming in and loving beer is so fun for me to see, you know, because they're my grandma's age.
And they had, and somebody of that, you know, social status had less choices 10 years ago.
Right.
And further less 10 years prior to that.
Yeah. And I think it does just, it weaves the community together.
Yeah.
And it allows people to come in, get a little bit loosened up, make some new friends, and then come back again next week and do it all over again.
It sounds a lot like your first beer festival.
Totally like my first beer festival. So many happy people.
Yeah. Well, thanks for everything you're doing for our lovely little community and for sitting down with us today.
Thank you, Fred.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you've been a good leader.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah.
You too.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and sharing while supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. The Michigan Brewers Guild was formed in 1997 with its first summer beer festival taking place in July of 1998. Its now 5 annual festivals are dedicated exclusively to Michigan beer brewed by more than 270 member breweries. The Michigan Brewers Guild exists to promote and protect the passionate Michigan beer industry in every way possible. To learn more, visit us at mibeer.com or say hello on one of our social media pages, as we love hearing from you. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer.
Let's drink Michigan beer, coast to coast and far and near. It's local and